5 items NBA players can't own. Being an NBA player has a lot of perks. There's riches, fame, and the chance to play a game for a living instead of setting for a regular job. Many would say that it's one of the best jobs in the world, but that doesn't mean there aren't any downsides to it. There's some things that NBA players just aren't allowed to have, and in this video, we're going to take a look at those. First on the list, we have Supreme Tattoos. Supreme is one of the most well-known fashion brands in the world, not because it's high fashion, but because it became popular in the streets as a trendy kind of status symbol. Of course, the NBA is pretty connected with the world of fashion, and it makes sense that some NBA players would be fans of the brand like Supreme. However, the league itself doesn't seem to have a high opinion of Supreme based on their actions. For example, the league disallowed the Supreme shooting sleeve that was worn by former Cavs sharpshooter J.R. Smith and was innovatively worn as a leg sleeve by Kelly Oubre Jr. The league ruled that both Smith and Oubre couldn't wear the sleeve, however, regardless of where it was worn. But it's not just the shooting sleeve that was banned by the NBA, because the league has also said that another Supreme branded item needs to be covered up: tattoos. J.R. Smith is probably a pretty big fan of the brand because he's gone as far as to have a Supreme word mark tattooed on his leg. But the league ruled that he needed to cover that up in the games to avoid a fine. It doesn't seem like the tattoo is an official endorsement from Supreme, since Smith claims to not have been paid for it. But the league doesn't care about that. If you want to advertise in the NBA, it looks like you'll have to buy an actual ad instead of getting creative with things like player gear and tattoos. Firearms. There's nothing stopping NBA players from owning a gun on their own time, but bringing them to an arena is something that shouldn't be tried. One NBA player, Gilbert Arenas, found that out the hard way, and it looks like this incident was the turning point for this time in Washington that led him falling off and eventually moving on from the team. Back in 2009, it was reported that Arenas had stored unloaded firearms in the team locker room at the Verizon Center. This was both against the league rules and against the law of the city of Washington, D.C. The situation became worse. However, in January 2010, when another report came out giving more details and saying that Arenas, as well as teammates Jarvis Criterion, both pulled out guns in the locker room during an argument that was about gambling debts. Arenas ended up pleading guilty to multiple firearms-related charges because of the incident, and the league also suspended him indefinitely. Both him and Criterion would be suspended for the season following this, and also sentenced to 2 years of probation and 30 days in a halfway house. However, Arenas would have a better fate down the line compared to his teammate Jarvis Criterion. Arenas continued to play in the NBA for some time after the incident and went on to the media afterwards with a podcast and a show on Complex News, while Jarvis, on the other hand, was charged with murder later on and sentenced to 23 years in prison. Motorcycles. For the billionaires who bankroll NBA teams and pay for player salaries, basketball players are a huge investment. The team owner pays the player a large amount of money, and the player can hopefully help their team win. As such, owners care about protecting their investments, and no one wants to agree to $100+ million and only watch their star get taken out for the season because of some injury picked up outside of the basketball court. For that reason, NBA contracts usually come with some things that are prohibited. One of the prohibited things is riding in a motorcycle, as this is seen as having a higher risk of injury compared to driving a car. But is that really true? The NHTSA has reported in the past that 13 cars out of every 100,000 are involved in a fatal accident. But on the other hand, 72 motorcycles out of every 100,000 are involved in one. That means that while most motorcyclists won't get into an accident like this, the chances are still 35 times higher than if the person were driving a car. There's also the risk that non-fatal injury. When you account for all the risks compared to the car, NBA owners just aren't willing to risk their players getting into motorcycle accidents. Race cars. On the other hand, it's not every kind of car is fine with NBA owners either. We've seen NBA players drive around with plenty of luxury cars But can you name an NBA player that's also driven a race car? You'll probably have a hard time finding one because most contracts also prohibit auto racing. Obviously, racing is more dangerous than regular cars, and even professional racers usually experience the feeling of a crash at some point or another. Chances of crashing are going up significantly if the driver isn't experienced, and most owners aren't up for risking their players like this. So if we see another two-sport athlete in the NBA, don't expect the second sport to be auto racing. Boxing gear. Celebrity boxing matches have been all the rage, with YouTubers such as the Paul brothers making headlines for stepping into the ring. But you won't see any NBA players in these matches anytime soon, because like auto racing, it's another sport that most contracts won't allow. It's easy to see why boxing is banned by NBA teams. After all, if you're paying millions of dollars for an athlete to play for your franchise and stay healthy, would you want them to take repeated hits to the head during both training and actual matches? Boxing carries a lot of health risks as its own sport, so it's pretty common for owners in other sports to allow their players to try it. That is it for this list of items that NBA players can't own. Thanks for watching, and make sure to hit the like button, subscribe, and go ahead and leave a comment down below for us.